Welcome to Conquering Your Clownfish, a podcast dedicated to transforming disabilities into special abilities. I'm your host, Brady Murray. Welcome to Conquering Your Clownfish. I am thrilled to introduce our special guest, Rachel Vermeulen. Rachel is a mother, wife, writer, speaker, content creator, and an advocate whose life changed when her son Caleb was born with Down syndrome, autism, and complex medical needs. As the founder of A Little Extra Love Ministries, she empowers disability families through faith-based support and community building. Rachel, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Brady. I'm so excited to be here with you.
This is going to be a really fun episode. You are doing some amazing, amazing things alongside your husband, Kyle. So I really would love to learn. Let's just, in fact, start just with your own story. You have two beautiful children and one with an extra chromosome. Tell us about your family.
Yeah, so I'm Rachel, my husband's Kyle, and we have two beautiful boys. Caleb, who was born with Down syndrome, coming up on 6 years. He turned 5 in June, so I can't believe we're already this far into our journey. And God has just blessed us so much through the love that comes with the extra chromosome that came with Caleb.
Yes.
And after Caleb, we have been on this journey of just finding community and creating and cultivating a space for disability families to just be seen, known, and loved, and for them to know that they're loved by a God who makes no mistakes, who's good no matter what, and who meets us in our brokenness every single time as long as we're open to receive it.
Wonderful, wonderful. So Rachel, Caleb is your first child, and so he's your firstborn son. And oftentimes with Down syndrome is introduced oftentimes later in a marriage where there's more children, and that's more of the latter part. And so in your situation, this is a rarity. And
yes.
I'm curious, how did that change things for you? I mean, you're entering into motherhood. This is your first child. You receive a diagnosis, I believe, around 13 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. How did that change things for you and your perspective on what motherhood was going to look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, there was, in the beginning, a lot of grief, right? I was really young, 22. Caleb is from a prior marriage, and the divorce, it came from the fact of disability parenting. And so when I got pregnant with Caleb, my ex-husband and I were really like in the space of tension of not knowing what life was gonna look like for us. And life turned out to look totally different than anything I expected. I never saw myself being 22 with a child with special needs, and also never saw myself being 22 divorced single mom to a child with special needs. And it was a really tough season. There was a lot of grief, but I had to learn how to rely on the one who holds me, and had to really rely on God and see that even in my brokenness, he was with me. It was a really desolate time. I like to tell people it was like a desert without a path out. I was just like walking through this desert, and it was desolate, and I felt so dry and so tired, and I couldn't see the goodness yet. Not like how I see now, of course. And it was tough, and it was broken, but God still met me there, and I was able to see so much beauty in who Caleb was created to be through my darkest days. He was the light. He was the reason I could keep going. And he was in the NICU for 3 months, and that was really tough on us and really tough on me. I was living in a space that was hundreds of miles away from my family. We were living in a kind of like a remote area of New Mexico. So I was 3 hours away from home in a major city, in the hospital by myself, just trying to navigate what life was going to look like with a child with Down syndrome, but also how I'm going to move forward as a single mom. What's this going to look like for me, and how am I going to navigate that? About a year after, Kyle came into the picture, and just fully loved Caleb as his own, and has just loved him that way since the day he met him, and has just really was, chose this for himself. He saw that, there's so much goodness in the way God creates people individually, and in every single chromosome there is so much blessing to who you are and to our genetic makeup and being created to exactly who you are supposed to be. And so he was able to see that in Caleb, and took that on. And it's been such a sweet journey in our life to see me go from this space of like desert, desolate, really tough time, doubting God, but only having him to rely on, to this space of seeing the beauty in the brokenness and seeing how good God is despite the hard things that we walk through in this disability parenting journey.
So Rachel, this is a lot for somebody at such a young age to have to take
Yeah.
on. You know, you're 22 years old. You're in a relationship, expecting a child, and then you receive this Down syndrome diagnosis. Did you foresee, or did you see then that relationship was going to end even before Caleb was born? Is that something that was clear at that
Yes.
time?
Yeah, probably a few months in, I could see that the relationship just wasn't what it was before. So things had changed, and everyone processes trauma so differently, especially when it goes to, your childhood. Have you experienced trauma? What was that like for you, and how was your response? And so when I saw the initial, responses and reaction, I knew that like it was likely my marriage wasn't going to make it, or that wasn't the marriage that I was called to be in with this child. And we had to navigate that, and it was tough and it was broken, and it was a really dark season for me. I struggled really bad with like postpartum depression and anxiety, mostly because I just lived in this place of fight or flight as a young single mom, trying to figure out having a child with a disability, and then also like working full time because I was a single mom, and all of those tough things that come with that. I ended up relocating back to Las Vegas. My family lived in Las Vegas, Nevada. And so we left New Mexico, went back to Las Vegas so I could have some family support
Of
as I
course.
navigated the journey of figuring out the unexpected that was my life in general, not just a Down syndrome diagnosis, but not being with the person who I thought I was going to be with forever. And it was definitely a challenging time, but through that, God has given us so much community, because I've been able to connect with other moms who went through that same situation, that were young at 22 years old and had the rare diagnosis of Down syndrome as a young person, and
Yeah.
having to walk through that not only without a partner, but like as a single mom and trying to navigate that. I've made some amazing relationships with some other women my age, and even younger than me now, that just have been able to navigate this because I was able to navigate it before, and they see that hope that, God doesn't say your story is done when something unexpected happens or all of the unexpected happens. He says, no, I'm going to use this and make it good and bring you to the other side of it. And he totally did that and was faithful with that in my life.
Rachel, I have to say, I mean, you are wise beyond your years, and
Oh,
you
thank you.
are an individual that I really sense a very deep, profound peace with everything that has transpired. I mean, Caleb's only 5, and so this isn't like a lifetime ago that all of this transpired. And I just really commend you for how well
Thank you.
you are, just in a place of maturity, in a place of peace and acceptance, and really believing and following this counsel that we receive oftentimes in this quote, that life doesn't happen to you, life happens for you. And you've taken these life experiences that you have had, and you're making the most out of that. And so I have a couple of questions. One question is, clearly you are a person of faith, and you have a deep-seated love in your faith. Is that something that you have had for a long time, or is this something that, with these trials and challenges, that made that more strong in your life?
Yeah, so I have been on a faith journey since I was about 13,
Hmm.
12, 13. I was the first Christian in my family. And so I wasn't raised by parents who loved the Lord or loved God, but they always let me explore and always let me spiritually seek. And I've always been a spiritual seeker. I've
Hmm.
always known there was something more. I think through my journey as a disability parent, my faith has changed a lot. It went from this space of perfection and striving for perfection and like like works would equal like heaven to me essentially
Mhm.
previously, where I would be like really pressuring myself to just be not only perfect in the church but also just perfect for the people around me, and it really stripped me of my authenticity. Through Caleb's diagnosis and through disability parenting, I've been able to see my faith transform into this deep reliance for the Lord, this deep reliance of just knowing God and knowing that He is good even in the midst of my brokenness and even in the midst of my mess. And so it's been a journey. I definitely, after Caleb and after my divorce, went through a season of doubt. And I was broken and I didn't know how to continue to seek the Lord. And I walked a path that, like, I did not want to be walking for a minute, but God thankfully got back into my heart and
Wow.
pulled me out of that and saw me. And I was able to fully see Him see me. And He told me, just be present. There is not a need for perfection, but there's a need for presence with me and
Mhm.
in me and knowing Him. And so as I've walked this path past that, that was probably about a year into Caleb, I really struggled with my faith. And the Lord, after that, just totally has pulled me out of it and shown me that He is so good, and that there's so many families that are in spiritual deserts because of lack of access
Yeah.
or because of the darkness that can come with a disability diagnosis and the grief that sits that lives in that. But
Yeah.
knowing that, grief and joy can coexist is such a gift, and that gift comes from the Lord.
Yeah. Beautiful. So, my next question, I would love to hear about Kyle.
Yes.
Kyle coming into your life. This is a very special thing.
Hmm.
You're having gone through a divorce. You have a little child who has Down syndrome. You are at a place where you are in your own desert in relation to your own faith journey, and insert Kyle into your life. Share with me
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah. So Kyle is honestly such a, I like to call him a golden retriever. Like, you meet him and he is literally like the most uplifting, loving human. And everyone who meets him feels this way, that you will just, if you have a conversation with Kyle, you leave feeling encouraged and loved by the Lord. And I felt that same way when I met Kyle. My friend Savannah, she is like my best friend, had been my best friend for years. And she also was walking through single motherhood at the same time I was. So God totally connected us and was like, hey, you guys are both walking through this. You guys need each other. And so she was like encouraging me to date again. She's like, Rachel, your story's not done here. You're only 23. You have this whole life and you're so bright. Like, just get on a dating app. And I was like, okay, I'll try it out. And so I downloaded this dating app called Hinge because it's supposed to be the classiest one. I was like, I can't do Tinder or Bumble. This is not for me. And I ended up, she made me pay for one day. And she was like, the hottest guys come to the top of your list if you pay for it. And I was like, all right, we'll see, girlfriend. And so we paid the 99 cents, and Kyle was the first guy who popped up.
Wow.
And so, yeah, I like swiped right on his thing. He had like, I'm a marketing strategist and brand strategist by trade. So like the pictures really brought value to me, right? I'm like, if you
Good.
have professional photos, we're probably on the same lane. And
Yep.
so we ended up connecting. And from that first conversation, I had told him, hey, I have a child with Down syndrome. And he said, Down syndrome is freaking amazing.
Mm.
I cannot wait to meet you.
Wow.
And so the next night was actually Thanksgiving. And so after Thanksgiving, my sisters were like, yeah, we'll watch Caleb. You go meet this guy. And so we went on our first date on Thanksgiving, actually in the middle of COVID. Like,
Wow.
it was during like the COVID year. And
Yeah.
yeah, we like literally, it was like love at first sight. Like,
Wow.
God, like, created Kyle for me and me for Kyle. Like, and it is so evident that if we hadn't went through, he was also married previously in a first marriage. And so, if we hadn't went through those first marriages, we would have never learned the value of having a healthy relationship. And
Yeah.
because we both have had that experience, our relationship now we meet each other where we're at. And not only that, he has raised Caleb since he was 1 year old and treats him as his own. Like,
Mhm.
people have no idea. If
Yeah.
we were walking on the street, you would not even know, unless, we tell you our testimony and how God has worked through that. And so Kyle's dream is to now, like, open a hotel that we can just have hundreds of people with Down syndrome to live in, and
I love it.
adopt kids from Armenia and like do all of the things, is
Yeah.
Kyle's heart now. And so he chose this. He chose to have a child with Down syndrome, and he soaks up every second of it. He has learned all of the sign languages, all of the nutrition research, and honestly, I honestly put him a huge part of getting Caleb to where he is today, and how he went from this really sick, medically fragile kid to this. He's so strong now and thriving and doing things that I could have never supplied him on my own, with me working,
Yeah.
two jobs and doing all of the things as a single mom. Kyle met me in that and has loved me and has given me everything we needed to make sure that Caleb thrives, and also to get me to a place where I could thrive and do the work that truly is on my heart, which is, just sharing the Lord with disability families.
Yeah, this is so beautiful, and it's actually very touching for me on a personal level. I actually was part of a relationship. So my mother and my father were divorced shortly after I
Mm-hmm.
was born. I think I was a year or two old, and my mom later met and dated a man by the name of Reed Murray when I was
Mm-hmm.
like 4, and later they got married, and then Reed ultimately adopted me when I was 13 years old, and so I was raised by my father, who was not my birth father, but was very much my father and treated me as his own. In fact, my mom still to this day will say that your dad married me because he wanted to raise you. He was more motivated in having you as his son than even me as his wife. And that's she says that with much love and respect. But what a unique thing and a special thing to be able to see this and see this come full circle. And so I know firsthand what it means for a father to choose to raise a son that didn't otherwise have to choose to raise that particular son. So hats off to Kyle.
Yeah, and it's just beautiful. It does show us this beautiful imagery of God's love for us, and how a father can be chosen, and that he can love you no matter what, even if he is not your blood, even if he's not your birth
Yeah.
father, he could love you just as much. And I love that you've had that same experience as well,
Yeah.
Brady.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a picture hanging in my office at home that's a picture of, in fact, when I first got it, Andrea gave it to me, I think for Father's Day, if I'm not mistaken. And when I first got it, she said, what is that picture of? And I said, oh, it's a beautiful picture. It's a picture of Jesus holding a toddler and
Mm.
teaching him how to pray. He's folding his arms and teaching him how to pray. And she said, actually, it's not. That's a picture of Joseph teaching Jesus how to pray. And the symbolism behind that was just beautiful because, with Joseph, Joseph was not Jesus's, mortal father
Father.
in
Yeah.
that respect. But he definitely took that role on and played a very, very pivotal role in ultimately Jesus rising and becoming who he was supposed to become. And so I feel very much a sacred role with children that I'm entrusted with that we've adopted or biological children. And I think that obviously if Kyle was on the show right now, he would definitely feel the same way about Caleb.
Absolutely.
So beautiful. So together, you guys have done some pretty amazing things. I'd love for you to talk about A Little Extra Love and the work that you're doing with this organization.
Yeah, so A Little Extra Love started out of a need for here in Colorado, honestly. I started originally just blogging, writing about my journey. I've always been a storyteller and a sharer, like I said, brand strategist, marketing strategist by trade. And so I've always loved to just share what we're going through, share what's going on to hopefully help someone that is walking the path behind me. Because without the community of the disability community and the Down syndrome community, I would have had no idea what I was doing. Thank God for Instagram, Facebook,
Yeah.
groups, all of the things, because it has connected me with the best humans. And so started out by just blogging, and then last year we moved to Colorado with a mission to serve families here, one and to get Caleb the best care possible. In Nevada, he was not getting the best care. In Colorado, does a lot of the Down syndrome research
Yeah,
for
great.
the country, and we saw the need here. 1 in 20 families has a child with a disability. About 94% are unchurched, or do not have a church community, do not have a spiritual practice. And so that's like a rough estimate, because that study was taken like 3 years ago. And
Yeah.
so I use it as like a rough number. But with that, coupled with the 80% divorce rate that I also experienced,
Hmm.
we saw this need to spiritually nourish families who aren't necessarily able to access church, or their churches don't have the resources. So we run grow groups, faith groups and Bible studies, essentially for mom, dads, and siblings,
Mhm.
and create community there, dive into the Word of God, and really find hope and healing through that. And then on top of that, we have a program called Inclusive Pathways that partners with churches of all denominations, to make your church more accessible and inclusive for IDD and DD individuals. We
Wow.
adapt curriculum, set up buddy ministries, do volunteer trainings, and provide honestly a really awesome sensory based curriculum for kids and teenagers and adults like Caleb. And so it's my heart. Kyle and I love doing it together. We love serving the families. And honestly, it has built our own support system to this
Yeah.
space that we have chosen family like at our house every single week. We constantly are opening our doors for disability families to just worship, pray, and have a space where they can belong, and not just feel like they're a burden, but that they actually belong, and that their kids are welcome, and that we can just all get each other on this level of not only does God show us goodness through this journey, but God shows us each other and
Yeah.
these shared experiences that bring so much value to families like ours.
Yeah. Wow. This is such a needed service and a needed ministry that you're doing. We have experienced that. We've witnessed it as well, how difficult it is for families who have a loved one that has a disability to be able to attend a church service.
Mm-hmm.
I think that people that are there, in fact, I know that the clergy, the leaders, the attendees, all of those individuals are well intentioned, but I think most of them just simply don't know what to do when
Mm-hmm.
there is a child that is acting up and
Yeah.
disrupting a service, or not able to sit still in Sunday school or whatever it may be. That I think by and large, all of the people want to be able to help, but they're just not sure how all of this is supposed to go down and how they could help. And so it sounds like a big part of the work that you're doing is that inclusion aspect of this in a church setting. So that's phenomenal.
Thank you. Yeah, it's my whole heart. I did ministry in the past, and then also worked nonprofit in curriculum and marketing and branding. And so I just saw this need that I could meet, and I knew I could build a curriculum that really impacted families, but that could be adapted to whatever the church was teaching on that year to that group. And so it's been such a blessing to me to see these church cultures not only transform to a place of inclusivity and acceptance, but watching kids with disabilities truly accept Jesus in their heart, learn
Yeah.
the gospel, and actually get to be baptized, and being able to adapt baptisms to best resource that child. And
Yeah.
it's just so cool and such a blessing. And every day I see God just do different miracles that I just get to witness and get to sit in and just get to see his goodness. And it
Yeah.
is just the most amazing thing. So, yeah.
Well, what's amazing, in fact, my last guest, if I'm not mistaken, one or two guests ago, talked about this very thing. And so she has a group of individuals that have Down syndrome that are adults that dance. They're called the Hip Hop Homies. I don't know if you've seen them at
I've
all.
heard of them. Yeah, I
They're
love
so
them.
fun, so fun. And she shared with me specifically an example of when she went to a Methodist church, and was able to have them perform, and she has a devotional type of message that shares about these individuals and the light and the joy that they bring, and that the pastor afterwards was speechless, was without words, because she was so emotional and was just touched by the Spirit in what she experienced having seen these individuals who have Down syndrome. And she said, this is better than any Sunday sermon that I could ever preach, in having these individuals come. And that's the thought that came to my mind as you're doing what you're doing, in that yes, you're opening pathways and doors for families to be able to come to a service and to feel comfortable in these church services, to welcome them openly and feel comfortable on this. And as a byproduct, you are allowing those individuals who have a disability to be able to share their light and joy with the congregation, simply by being there and having their presence felt. And oftentimes that's the most powerful sermon that we can have, is seeing these beautiful people that have these unique characteristics about them that truly share that light and joy of our Father in heaven.
I totally agree. And I just believe that, education can eliminate ignorance, right? So the more we can educate these spaces of faith, it's not that that their intentions are bad. It's that they just don't know how. They don't know. They're not equipped with
That's
the
right.
resources to be able to meet needs. One thing I tell every single church we sit down with is that people with intellectual disabilities and developmental disabilities don't have a spiritual deficit. God loves them just as much as he loves any typical person,
That's
and
right.
they can feel his spirit just as much as any typical person can.
You're
And
right.
that is a gift that we all need to see. Even more so, Caleb he loves praise and worship music. It's like his whole vibe.
I can
And I
imagine. Yeah.
it's his whole vibe. And he is constantly just dancing, raising his arms to praise and worship music. Like
Yeah.
when they say lift your hands, Caleb is the first to lift his hands. And that shows me that God speaks to him just as much as he speaks to me.
That's
God
right.
is with him just as much as he is with me. And every single church leader, congregation needs to be able to see that, needs to be
That's
able to
right.
see that these kids, these people, these humans, all humans need to be spiritually nourished in some way, shape, or form to have optimal health.
Yeah, most definitely. I often say that society and the world at large would say that we, or that these individuals, so our children, our loved ones who have a disability, they need us a lot more than we need them. And the reality is it's the complete opposite. And
Yep.
so when you look at it through the lens from a faith standpoint, and in, let's say, a religious setting, I think that sometimes even clergy or leadership may say that we are happy to accommodate and to help and be able to do what we can for these individuals, when in reality what they're doing is ultimately opening up a pathway to where these individuals are going to be able to let their light shine more so and have a greater impact than oftentimes what the spoken word is when they're sharing a message. And so that's a beautiful thing. I've seen that. I've seen that with Nash, my 17-year-old in particular. He is very active in our congregation and very involved. And any chance that he has to be able to share a testimony about Jesus, he will. And any chance that he has to be able to pray or to be able to participate, he will. And I 100% agree with what you're saying, in that these individuals are very much in tune with the Spirit and with
Yes.
those feelings that come from God. And
Yeah.
so what a special work that you're doing.
Thank you. And I love that your congregation, and I know the LDS Church does this so well at meeting the needs of people with disabilities. And I love to, it is just the best thing to see. I was actually just seeing I saw Summer Adams post that Jane was giving a talk
Yeah.
at church. And I was like, wow, this is the gospel, right? This is the gospel. We need to have our kids on the platform
Yes.
giving the message. And it is so powerful that your guys' church just does that. And I love it. I'm like, all churches need to be like this.
Well, everybody's just doing the best that they can, right? But what a
Yep.
tremendous work that you guys are doing and the ministry that you're doing.
Thank
So,
you. Yeah,
Rachel,
I love it so much. And I love getting to hear the different aspects across all the board and just hearing that Nash, like, gets so excited to get to give his testimony. I can't wait for the day that Caleb is like, hey, Mom, I want to go,
Yeah.
I want to get baptized, or I want to ask Jesus into my heart, or I want to go share my testimony.
Right.
How powerful that Nash is there and is just saying, hey, Dad, let me go up there and share
Yeah.
what Jesus told me.
He's not afraid, and he's been like that for most of his life, that he's just very willing to be able to share like what he's feeling inside. Very in tune with that. Rachel, I want to close by sharing something, and in fact having you comment about something that I think is just beautiful. And so we asked you, what's one thing that we would want the world, that you would want the world to know about Caleb? And this is what you said. You said, if there's one thing I want the world to know about Caleb, it's that he's an absolute treasure with a purpose that's uniquely his own. His journey has shown me that our differences aren't weaknesses, they're invitations for connection and growth. Caleb has this incredible spirit that lights up every room, and he has a way of inspiring those around him in ways that often go unnoticed. When people take a moment to really see him beyond just the label, they discover a joyful, resilient little boy who brings so much to the table. I truly believe that by embracing and celebrating his abilities, we can create communities that are richer and more inclusive for everyone. Could you comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, just like it said, I truly believe that Caleb is a treasure. He is a gift that was given to me from God, that is God's still guiding him. I'm just the steward here on earth. I just get the opportunity to love him and be his mom here and guide him on his journey here. But in the midst of it all, God is the one who knows it all. He already knows Caleb's every step. He already knows my every step. He already knows your every step. And through our journey of being able to see this perspective that this is a gift, it's not a consolation prize. It is not less than. It is more of everything, more love, more joy, everything extra that you can think of that is beautiful is the journey of being a parent of someone with Down syndrome. And we both know that, Brady. But
We
for
do.
anyone who doesn't, it is truly the greatest gift. The things you learn, the experiences you have with the Holy Spirit and God, and just knowing the knowingness of a peace that surpasses all understanding because of this space of surrender and knowing that you don't know what comes next with your child with Down syndrome, but
That's
you
right.
do know the one who does.
That's right. Yeah,
And that is everything.
that's right. Beautifully and very well said. Rachel, thank you for being a guest. Thank you for your example and the light. I love your attitude. I want to reiterate what I said earlier. You are wise beyond your years, and you have a great work to be able to do and many people to be able to impact for the good. So thank you for the work, and thank you for being a guest on the show today.
Thank you for your work. I'm grateful to be here, and it was a great conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Conquering Your Clownfish. If you liked what we discussed on the podcast today and want to continue the conversation, please visit us at conqueringyourclownfish.com. And please don't forget to subscribe.